Dungeon Defenders is a tower defense action RPG game released in 2011 for the PC, Xbox 360, and PlayStation 3. If you're anything like me, you love Dungeon Defenders. Given that the game has a solid 93% positive rating on Steam, it's safe to say many people are like me. But what about Dungeon Defenders is so great? Is it the exciting gameplay, unique art style, orchestral soundtrack? Combination of all three? That's why I'm here. This is how I feel about Dungeon Defenders. Hey guys, Kugel from the future here. I just wanted to pop in quickly and say this video took a lot of work to make, so I'd really appreciate if you can support it however you can. If you enjoyed it, you can let me know by liking the video, and feel free to let me know how I can improve my videos in the comments. Thanks so much, now on to the video. I'm going to start with what I consider to be the weakest part of the game, and then move on to the greater things from there. And the weakest part of this game, in my opinion, is the story. So we're on the same page of what the story is. I'll do a very quick story recap, so get ready. Ready?
Long ago, there were 4 heroes named the Grand Magus, the Knight, the Elven Ranger, and the Chi Master. They fought against the Old Ones, who commanded an army of goblins, orcs, and other fantasy creatures. They beat them and trapped the Old Ones inside the Eternia crystals. Many years later, they leave the kingdom where the Eternia crystals are kept, as they are warned of an evil far away they must face. In their stead, they leave their children to defend the castle. While playing, they break a crystal and unleash all the forces of evil their parents locked away. The castle is placed under siege, and they must climb their way up the castle while defending the crystals kept there to defeat the army's general, the Ancient Dragon.
Now, this story isn't bad, but it's generic at best and bland at worst. It serves the purpose it's trying to fill, and it doesn't really need to be more than that. However, the story is still the weakest part of this game. On top of the story here, there also is a 4-part DLC storyline, which has you collecting the 4 lost shards of the missing Eternia crystal, and ultimately saving your parents from their fate at the hands of the Old One. This DLC storyline is more intertwined with the maps than the main game story, but it's still not the main focus of the game. The main focus of this game is the gameplay. Tower defense games are a polarizing genre among gamers. You seem to either love them or hate them, and I'm solidly in the love them category. I've been playing tower defense games since Balloon's Tower Defense 4 on my iPod Touch 2nd generation. Since then, I've loved tower defense games. However, Dungeon Defenders is not just a tower defense game, but it's also an action RPG game, and I'm also a big fan of those. It's hard to articulate exactly what these games do for me, but it tickles me in a way only I could do to myself. No, that's not a joke, I'm just that ticklish. Anyways, the game boils down to 2 main phases, the build phase and the combat phase. During the build phase, summoning and upgrading towers takes far less time, and you can take a moment to fortify your defenses from the damage it took from the last round. On Insane and Nightmare difficulty, you have limited time in the build phase, so be careful, you might get caught with your pants down. After that, it's on to the combat phase, where enemies will flood out of certain areas of the map and make their way towards your crystals and try to destroy them. Even if 1 crystal is destroyed, it's game over. You can line your towers, fight the enemies yourself, but you'll probably end up doing a bit of both. There's also survival and pure strategy modes, where you put your skills to the test and try to beat up to 35 waves on any given map. These can be incredibly difficult and require a lot of strategy and the utilization of all of your heroes. The game has 8 different classes, 12 if you include the alternate gender versions of the original 4 characters. The original characters are the Apprentice, Squire, Huntress, and Monk, and each character has a very unique way to play them that makes every playthrough feel a little bit different. Apprentice has powerful ranged towers and has a strong ranged attack, but he suffers from the lowest health pool of all of the heroes. Squire has physical-based towers such as barricades, harpoons, and the ever-popular slice and dice blockade. It goes pretty burr. He uses melee attacks and can block to reduce incoming damage. He also boasts the largest health pool, but the slowest movement speed out of any of the 4 heroes. The Huntress has a ranged gun or crossbow, which typically has a high rate of fire, but has limited ammo, requiring you to reload quite often. Her towers are all traps that enemies ignore, and can trigger by walking over them. But instead of having health, they have detonation limits. She also boasts the 2nd smallest health pool and the highest movement speed of the 4 heroes. The Monk is the most support-oriented hero, and features the most balanced stats of the main heroes, having a medium health and speed. His towers are auras that enemies will ignore and have health that drains as their effect is used. He is the only hero that has both a ranged and melee attack. Each of these characters have an alternate gender form of them that changes up their base stats and abilities. All the female forms have faster movement speed, but lower health when compared to their male counterparts. On top of these 4 heroes, there are 4 other heroes who were added over the years as a DLC. The Series EV is a character who can use both apprentice staffs and huntress guns, and has energy beams as her towers. He can have 2 weapons at the same time and swap between them freely. Summoner has no attacks of his own, but he can have 2 pets, and has his own defense units instead of the normal defense units available to every other hero. And his towers are crystal versions of the enemies, allowing them to be moved wherever he wants them to go. Barbarian has no towers of his own, but he has incredibly strong abilities that change how much damage he can do, his defense, and other various effects. He wields 2 swords at the same time, and is capable of doing massive damage. The Jester is the Jester. He can wield 2 weapons and swap between them. His towers are a thing, but they're not very good, and they're probably the worst in the game. Each character has an entirely different way that it's played, and it makes new playthrough as a different character exponentially different than other ones. Character customization is also rock solid in this game. Not only can you change your color scheme of your character, but you can also switch between different costumes. Next up is the enemies. There aren't a lot of types of enemies, but each one fills a unique role and feels special in their own way. Goblins are a typical weak fodder. Archers shoot you from a range and can volley your defenses out of its range. Orcs are tanks who hit hard and take even harder hits. There are Dark Elf warriors who completely ignore your defenses and go straight for you. Mages who can heal enemies and summon skeleton warriors to fight for them. Wyverns fly above your towers and go straight for your crystals. Kobolds light the bomb on their back and suicide into your defenses for massive damage. And of course, there's the Ogre. The Ogre is an amalgamation of most of the types of enemies. He has a ranged attack, does massive damage with his club, and comes with a beefy HP stat. At the end of each act of the main game, and at the end of each Eternia Shards map, there's also a boss fight. Each boss has a unique weak spot that you need to exploit in order to beat the fight. There are a lot of maps in Dungeon Defenders, and all of them feel great. They have a ton of variety, complexity, verticality, and replayability. As you go throughout the story, you move up through the castle, and the levels demonstrate this, starting you in the deeper well and ending you on the summit. Each act feels like a brand new part of the castle, and each one feels connected to the rest. Difficulty curves of the levels is fairly smooth, with increasing enemy paths and crystals as you move forward. Each character has to approach each level in a different way based on how their towers work, which makes it feel like every time you play a new character, each map is new as well. And then there's the music. The music is outstanding. Each act has 3 different songs, a build phase song, a combat phase song, and a boss song. The Eternia Shards each come with their own 3 songs as well, and they all fit the theme of the map perfectly. From the Arabic strings and flutes of the Morago desert town, the soothing and calm marimba of Aquanos. To the eerie chimes of Misty Mire Forest. Each one feels as distinct as the settings they take place in. The choice of an orchestral soundtrack really complements the fantasy theme and causes some incredibly epic moments during the middle of combat. The build phase music is always slower and gives you a moment to pause and think about what you need to do before kicking into the higher energy combat music, giving more energy to what can already be an extremely stressful situation. The constant seesaw of tempo, which is exactly how the game works. You like colors? Because this game has colors. Every aspect of this game is bright and saturated, makes everything pop against everything else. Between the bright shades and every weapon you find in the ground and the mana crystals that spew out of enemies, to the map design and the towers using as many of the 16 million colors your monitor can display, it makes for a thoroughly rich art style that transcends photoreal graphical fidelity. This game is 10 years old and still holds up. Every enemy is easily identifiable based on their unique silhouettes, and each class's tower is also incredibly unique and impossible not to tell who they belong to. For example, the apprentices' towers all use the same hand design. The one problem is that the screen can get fairly cluttered in late rounds, if there's enough happening. Between the explosions, damage numbers, projectiles, Battlefield can get visually noisy very fast, but the art style is still striking and holds up to this very day. Dungeon Defenders is my second favorite game of all time, only falling below the masterpiece that is Pokemon Mystery Dungeon Explorers of Sky. I love every aspect of this experience, from the incredible work Afshin Cohen did on the soundtrack, to the timeless visual style, and the highest replayability I've ever seen from a game that isn't a PvP game. This game always has me coming back. Playing through in a new way is always a blast, and playing co-op is some of the most fun I've ever had in gaming. Dungeon Defenders will always hold a special place in my heart. Ever since I first saw Captain Sparkles play this game nearly 10 years ago, holy shit, and had a PC that couldn't run it, I fell in love with this game. My only hope is that with this video, I could share my love for something that means so much to me, because I feel so strongly about Dungeon Defenders.